Video game companies hate pirates.
Captain!
Yeah?
I mean, just look at what Nintendo did to this one guy who hacked switches and oh my god, his name was Bowser. Kinda poetic, honestly. Getting back on track, what I find interesting about video game piracy is how developers find ways to mess with players that got their games by non-desired means. Now, with most games today, it's kinda boring. They just put the nouveau DRM into the game, which still gets broken anyways, and only ends up making the paid copy perform worse than the pirated copies without the software. See, they were more creative before, having code execute to change game properties in either lighthearted or cruel ways. And that's what I'll be doing, going over various ways developers mess with pirates who try to play their games for free. Before starting, please leave a like and subscribe, and you'll be blessed with a non-0% chance of winning the lottery. Now, let's begin. Mirror's Edge is a game about parkour.
Parkour!
You run and jump across levels, and once mastered, you can seamlessly glide across buildings in a silky smooth way. However, to make these necessary jumps, you need momentum, or else you'll go crashing down to the streets below. And that's where the anti-cheat within the game kicks in. You see, how the design works for levels is that it's usually completely white, and you follow the red objects to progress through the stage. In some cases, you'll need to jump across buildings. However, as you get closer to the red board to jump off of, the protagonist's face slows down to a walk. Without the necessary momentum, all the player can do is fall towards the death, unable to proceed with the game. Batman Arkham Asylum took a similar approach for its anti-piracy, making both the gliding mechanic and grappling hook unreliable to use, making it more difficult to progress throughout the game. Pirates would end up reporting the problem to developer Eidos, to which a developer simply said, "It is not a bug in the game's code, it is a bug in your moral code." The fighting game Skullgirls had an interesting approach, as they didn't make the game any more difficult or remove features like most games do. In fact, the game is unaltered except for one very minor addition. After clearing the story mode for the game, a notice message will pop up saying, "What is the square root of a fish? Now I'm sad." After seeing the message, players would simply ask, "Well, what the fuck does this mean?" and try to find out online what the meaning of it was. By going to forums and asking others if they knew what it meant, pirates had essentially self-reported themselves as only their pirated version of the games contained the message. During June to July of the 2010 World Cup, no matter what game was being played, one sound would dominate any broadcast. The infamous Vuvuzela would drown out all other noise during games, and while most people complained about how annoying it was, Ubisoft was taking notes. See, in a few months' time, they were releasing Michael Jackson The Experience, and while watching the World Cup, they had a fantastic idea coming to their head for the rhythm game. So only if you pirated the DS version of the game, none of the other versions, just the DS version, Vuvuzelas would play on top of the songs, creating a remix from hell. On top of the Vuvuzelas, the songs would be more compressed than usual, and the game locks up before any notes actually appear. Serious Sam 3 would see a unique situation play out, where what would be added to the pirated version of the game would become loved in its community. After picking up a pistol at a certain point, a brand new enemy will pop up exclusive to the pirated version of the game. This version of the red arachnoid monster enemy was unkillable, very fast, and could kill the player very easily. The unkillable Scorpion would go on to become one of the more popular aspects of the game, with mods being made to bring the beast into legal versions of the game. Being a video game about making video games, it makes sense Greenheart Games, developers of Game Dev Tycoon, uses its anti-piracy version to show the effects rampant piracy could have on a company. You see, the cycle of a game is to develop a new game, release it hopefully for a profit, and then use those funds and research points earned to learn new skills to make your games better for the future and eventually grow into a giant game developer. Your company will start off fine and be able to grow, however sales will begin to stagger off as less actual people buy your games and instead pirate them. With the heavily hindered sales, you'll eventually enter debt or go bankrupt and get a game over. In a later update, this pirate mode was added to the actual game, serving as a new difficulty option. Out of all the games mentioned in this video, Alan Wake probably has the most lighthearted anti-piracy version. Instead of making the game insanely difficult or impossible to beat like most of the other ones mentioned, the only change made that Alan Wake isn't even through gameplay but a cosmetic. All that happens is Alan is given a nice eye patch with a pirate skull and bones to remind the player that
You are a pirate!
Multiple websites I read also said the loading screen tips now ask the player to buy the game to support the developer. However, I couldn't find any images or videos of this, so if you find it, let me know in the comments. While most of the anti-piracy measures taken are mean-spirited and try to punish the player, Just Shapes and Beats takes a more understanding and wholesome approach. Initially, the player is faced with a somewhat aggressive message, parroting famous anti-piracy ads from the past.
Downloading pirated games is stealing! Stealing is against the law!
Afterwards, the game's developer pops up on the screen, saying he understands if someone pirated the game, as he did his fair share of it when he was a kid, unable to afford the actual games he wanted to play.
I wanted to say that it's okay, I'm not mad. I've played my share of pirated game when I was a kid, so I guess this is karma, right?
The gameplay remains unaffected, with the developer asking the player to support the game in other ways, such as spreading it through word of mouth or watching the development streams.
Talk about them, share the games with everyone, leave a positive review, a good rating, send them a tweet, an email, whatever. Let other people know. That helps us a lot.
Spyro the Year of the Dragon would at least give the courtesy to players saying they are playing an illegal copy, as after completing the first world normally, the character Zoe would give a warning.
I'm sorry, Spyro, but you seem to be playing a hacked version of this game. This may be an illegal copy. Since this copy has been modified, you may experience problems that would not occur on a legal copy.
If the player decided to ignore her caution, the game would hold no punches and drag out its punishment rather than give a swift knockout blow. To list some of the changes the game would make, exiting to 100% the game would be removed, Sparks' health would always remain at 1, the language would change if you're playing a European version of the game, and you'd be randomly teleported around the map. If the player somehow made it through all this bullshit thrown at them and beat the final boss, the game would crash sometime during the fight. Once loaded again, all progress made would be deleted, with the player stuck at the beginning and unable to see the ending. While this is very, very cruel, it wasn't the first game to popularize this method of wasting the player's time. No, that distinction goes to probably the game with the most notorious anti-piracy method, the Nintendo RPG, Earthbound. Earthbound had a simple approach if the code detected a bootleg cartridge running the game. It would just add more enemies. This would increase the difficulty severely, making it a lot harder to progress throughout the title as more battles would be required to progress towards the end. However, the final blow came at the final boss, as after a couple lines of dialogue the game would permanently freeze, forcing the player to reset the console. Once you went to load your save file back up, tragedy would strike as all the save files will have been deleted, making the extra grueling journey all for nothing. So those were just a handful of anti-piracy measures taken by developers. If you enjoyed, leave a comment saying your favorite anti-piracy version of a game shown or suggest one that wasn't covered. I might do a part 2 someday, so any versions not mentioned would be appreciated. If you want to know more about any of these topics, every source is in the description. With all that said, thanks for watching and Ptok out.
What shall we do with a drunken sailor? What shall we do with a drunken sailor? What shall we do with a drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way up she rises, way up she rises, way up she rises, early in